And now I'm really excited to introduce our keynote speaker. This is Dr. Christine Ferguson, and she's visiting us all the way from Birmingham, Alabama. So Dr. Ferguson is a registered dietitian. She's also a board certified specialist in gerontologic nutrition and an assistant professor in the Department of Nutrition Sciences at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. She does clinical research on effective dietary patterns for the management of Parkinson's disease. And she also enjoys communicating helpful, safe, and effective nutrition recommendations to people with PD. So really excited to have her tell us about nutrition for Parkinson's.
Here we are. Hello, everyone. It is not lost on me that my talk is right before lunch. So I will try to keep us as much on schedule as possible. I'm so grateful to be here with you today. And we are going to talk all things nutrition from various levels. A little bit about me, just briefly. I'm from Alabama. Dr. O'Mara was so kind to share that background information, but I will say I'm going to skip ahead to the family connection to PD. So I've been with my husband, it'll be 10 years of marriage this year, and we've been together for 15 years. And I'm so close with his grandparents, and his grandmother has Parkinson's. And whenever I was in my graduate program, she would ask me questions of, what should I be eating? I'm taking this supplement. I'm doing this and I've been doing it. What do you think? And so Margaret Jackson and her husband, Jerry, are the reason why I'm here today, because I realized that there's not a lot of answers to really specific questions with nutrition and Parkinson's. So that's when I got into research, because if we don't have the answers, let's do some research and answer them ourselves. So that's why I'm here today. And I thought it would be helpful to be kind of clear and upfront, because dietitians have various perspectives on nutrition. So my nutrition philosophy, I fully believe in the fact that we make a decision 3 or more times per day, usually, of what we eat, and it can impact our body in different ways. So I do think food is a tool in the toolbox of managing our day-to-day lives, whether you have Parkinson's disease or not. But I also understand that even if we had the specific formula of you should eat chicken and rice every day, which I'm not saying, that even though if one day there's a formula of what we should eat, that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to work for us every day, because food is more than just food, right? Food is social connection. Food is enjoyment. Food can be comfort. Think back to your favorite meal growing up as a kid. That starts like producing some serotonin and happy feelings. So just know that I'm coming at it from that whole concept of what food can mean. So the overview of today, I'm going to talk about the fundamentals of nutrition. Everybody, you may be an expert in nutrition, or you may know, what you purchase on just a day-to-day basis. So wherever you're coming at this from, we're going to get on the same page about fundamentals of nutrition. I'll get into nutrition's role in Parkinson's, latest updates on Parkinson's nutrition research. I've been really pleased with the talks that we've already had, because there's been some sprinkles of nutrition. So I'm really glad to have the opportunity to expand on those topics. And then at the very end, I'm going to leave you with some practical tools, actual tools that you can use in the kitchen, and some strategies to make healthy eating easier. We want it to be quick. We want it to be nutritious, but we also want it to be tasty. So that is what I'll be talking about today. Some fundamentals of nutrition. So all our food has macronutrients in it, and that is what is providing us with energy. So we have carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And these 3 compounds are in most of our foods, actually, and they're providing us with energy. So when we look at these individually, the picture in the top left is a beautiful picture of some delicious carbohydrates that's largely found fruits, vegetables, and grains. And when we talk about carbohydrates, we group them into 2 separate groups based on how they are digested and absorbed. So the first is simple carbohydrates. That is if you were like me and you went in the back and you had coffee and you put a tablespoon of sugar. That is a simple carbohydrate. That means that your body is going to digest and absorb it really quickly. This can be really helpful. If you know anybody with diabetes who has low blood sugar, that sugar will make it jump up really quick, which can be helpful. However, we want to have more of a balance. And we actually want most of our carbohydrates in a day to be complex carbohydrates. They take a little bit longer to break down. And these complex carbohydrates are going to come from our starchy vegetables, so like potatoes and corn, some squashes. And then it'll also come from things like beans and peas and lentils. So they're all going to have complex carbohydrates, and having a higher consumption of these complex carbohydrates are going to have a more beneficial effect on things like your blood glucose, your blood sugar, and on your cholesterol levels. And it can be really helpful as far as aiding digestion and supporting that gut health. Next, we have protein. That's going to be that middle picture to the right of, those are more of the animal sources of protein. And we're going to talk a little bit more about protein later on, but the key point I'll leave with you right now is that we want our protein to be varied. You don't want to just have the same protein, having a piece of steak for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You really want to mix it up, and we want it to come from more plant sources of protein. So things like those beans, peas, and lentils, nuts, tofu, soy products, as well as meat products, but we're really wanting those lean sources of protein, so less fat. Next, we have fat. So fat comes in also different forms, and we typically break this up into two different groups. So we have our saturated fats and our unsaturated fats. So our unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature. You are going to find those I apologize, reverse. Saturated fats are solid at room temperature. I was skipping ahead to my favorite fats. So saturated fats are solid at room temperature, and those are going to be what's found in our, think about our cheeses, our whole fat dairy. You get a big piece of steak and you see that marbling in it. Those are all solid pieces of fat, and that's going to be less heart healthy. What's healthy for your heart is also healthy for your brain. So that's something that you can also take away when we see a lot more information on heart health. Usually what's good for the heart is also good for the brain. So we want to choose less saturated fats. You're still permitted some, but we really want our fat intake to come from these unsaturated fats, which you're going to see those in the bottom picture to the left. You can see them. There's some nuts, avocado, oils. It's also found in salmon. So that's why you may have heard about the promotion of eating fatty fish. So these unsaturated fats are going to support your cholesterol levels, supporting heart health, brain health, and they're more anti-inflammatory. And we're going to get into all of that as well. Our micronutrients are very important. There are vitamins and our minerals. They don't provide us with energy or the calories, but they support our metabolism and breaking down and absorbing what we are consuming from our macronutrients. We'll get more into that in a little bit. Also, it's not a macronutrient or a micronutrient, but water, so important. After lunch, get a big cup of water, keep refilling it. We all need to be hydrated. You can go from feeling fatigued and tired and having a bad day to really flipping that over just by having more water intake. So that's something I will say, being in Colorado from Alabama, I've never seen so many people with their own personal water bottles. So I think y'all are already on the right track there. All right, so nutrition's role in Parkinson's disease. This is really, I'm going to go through this slide by slide. So first, we're going to talk about chronic inflammation. This was talked about, introduced earlier. I can't remember which presentation it was, but chronic inflammation, this is not the spirit. This is low-grade inflammation that honestly, we all experience at some sort of baseline. And so we're going to talk about a really mean-looking picture here of free radicals. And what they do is they take things from our healthy atoms. It causes cellular damage that can lead to more inflammation. So what affects these free radicals? So any type of stress, it can be daily stress, it can be stress to the body. Cigarette smoke, pollution, UV rays, alcohol, pesticides can all increase free radicals. And if there are too many free radicals, then they're taking away from our healthy atoms, causing our cells to not be very happy. So more free radicals, less healthy atoms, and that leads to basically, it's just think of a small fire. We can manage, our body does a great job with managing little fires. It can take away the damaged cells and grow new healthy cells, but if this is left unchecked, the fire can get bigger. Again, this is not to scare you. It's going to be okay. But when we think about inflammation, we think about chronic inflammation, especially in the context of Parkinson's disease, this has been linked in research studies that greater levels of inflammation can increase disease progression and worsening of symptoms. So I'm here today to talk about food because that is my scope of expertise. There are other areas that could discuss their role in chronic inflammation, but I'm going to talk about food with you. So how food can help. We have the really cool guy in the sunglasses. There are antioxidants. So basically, when the free radical is wanting to take something from the healthy atom, the antioxidant's like, oh wait, I have an extra one. Don't take it from that, take it from me. So where we get our antioxidants from, these compounds, so we have vitamin C, vitamin E, zinc, selenium, and phytochemicals. Has anyone heard of phytochemicals? It sounds complex. I see a couple nods and hand raises. It's just plant chemicals. It's just chemicals that our plants have. They're not vitamins, they're not minerals, but they can support health. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So when we increase our consumption of these compounds, and remember, you see how I have it bolded and underlined food, because we want to get this from food rather than just supplementation. When we increase that, we have more antioxidants, less free radicals, healthy atoms, which leads to happy brain. So fruits, vegetables, and we're going to talk about all the things that is going to be what we can do in the day-to-day to help reduce and mitigate this chronic inflammation. So I've already talked about what chronic inflammation is. We can address it through diet. Again, diet and food is a tool in your toolbox. So this is something that needs to be a concerned effort with your health professionals as well. But I'm going to talk about functional foods. So functional foods, I have the definition here because I'm going to highlight a couple of points. So it's foods, whole foods. So as a registered dietitian, I'm going to talk about foods. We'll touch on supplements, but I'm talking about foods. They can have things added to it to fortify or enhance it, but they have a benefit basically above than just, it's more than just giving you calories to sustain you, but it has beneficial effects on health and when it's consumed as part of a varied diet. We're all creatures of habit. If you eat the same things every day, I want to encourage you to mix it up a little bit, try something new. So, and I have some suggestions on how to do that. Some examples of functional foods. You can ignore certain parts or you can focus on the others. So I get a little technical here, but the foods below contain what's called polyphenols. So that is a group of these phytochemicals. You just need to pay attention to the foods themselves, but if you're a nerd like me, I have the terms of the polyphenols for each food. So the foods below, they have these polyphenols. They act as antioxidants. Again, they are helping to really reduce those angry free radicals. And so the first is green tea, preferably unsweetened or the less added sugar, the better. So it's been linked to improve metabolic health. If you're improving your metabolic health, that can have overall health benefits. And then soy, the topic, I already see I saw the face. I saw the face. Okay, so having thyroid issues, that's the kind of tricky part about talking to a group, because there may be people who have certain contraindications. So they may have a certain, condition, disease that soy may not be the functional food for you. For other people, this is a great way to, one, increase our plant protein. Soy is also really rich in calcium. So if you're looking at, if you can't consume dairy or you're looking for some non-dairy alternatives, soy is a good choice. So, and there have been mixed research with Parkinson's, but there is nothing conclusive to say that it impacts Parkinson's in a negative way. And then next are berries. So like our blueberries, blackberries, strawberries. They are just these tiny little things that are just packed with antioxidants. That would be an easy way, an easy food to just sprinkle on whatever you're eating. It could be a salad, it could be oatmeal, it could just be, in your hand eating it, but they are just punched with antioxidants and vitamins, minerals. There have actually been more concrete evidence to show that increasing berry intake has been linked to improved cognition. So the next two, the other one is more like a group of foods that contain omega-3 fatty acids. So that is the unsaturated fats. There are one type of fats under that umbrella. And those omega-3 fatty acids, they're found in like our oils, our olive oils especially. I will say, oils are usually a hot topic. Avocado oil, olive oil are two really good ones that I tend to recommend. And then they're also found in salmon, fatty fish like tuna, and walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds. Those are all rich in omega-3s. If you hate all of those, then maybe you can talk with your doctor, your care team about the fish oil supplement. That's one that's relatively on the safe side. The next are probiotics and prebiotics. Is this something we're familiar with? I'm seeing a lot of head nods. I'm also seeing some people who are just staring. So we are going to explain probiotics and prebiotics. They've really come on the rise in the past, 5-10 years. So probiotics are a good bacteria that's in our gut. This is all about supporting our gut health. So probiotics, good bacteria. Prebiotics are the food for good bacteria. You can't just have the good bacteria there and not feed them, then they just, die or go somewhere else. So you need both of them. And so then you may have heard, especially like supplements being called a symbiotic. But so I will say that is, I'm gonna skip down. Actually, no, I'm not. So choosing foods with probiotics is going to be like your fermented foods. So fermented foods like kimchi, a low sugar kombucha, there are probiotics often in Greek yogurt. Those are some good ways of getting probiotics through our food. Prebiotics is going to be in a lot of our fruits and vegetables. So if you're already including that in your day-to-day diet, you're all set. So it helps support our gut health. And we're going to talk a little bit more about gut health in a little bit. But especially if you're having any gastrointestinal issues, probiotics, they can help. It's not going to be an overnight thing. It might take a little longer. It might take a week. It might take a month. But it's something that can improve some gastrointestinal symptoms. But then the question is food versus supplement. I will always be an advocate for food first. Try to get it from your food. Supplements are expensive, and it's really mixed. The research on probiotics especially is really mixed because has anybody ever tried a probiotic before? A show of hands. Have you ever looked on the back of like what's in it? The names are like this long. So, you might see lactobacillus, that's a really common one, but then it might be one, it might be a mix. So the studies on this are really inconclusive because everybody's using a different mix. They're using a different formula. It's really hard to parse out what's beneficial and what's not. Whenever you choose supplements in general, first you talk with your physician, probably your pharmacist too, bring the whole care team in because choosing a supplement could interact with your regularly prescribed medications. But if you do get the sign off from your care team that you can take a supplement, look for this label, the USP verified label. So this is third-party tested, good manufacturing practices, and that also will be on the label as well. But that basically says what is on the label is what's actually in the product, and to the amount as well. So the supplement industry is not regulated as well as like our medication, or regularly prescribed medication. So this is actually something to take an extra minute to make sure that what you're taking is safe for you. If you're ever, if you're ever just not sure, just take a picture, print out a picture, bring it to your appointments and ask. All right. So as a dietitian, I talk about food all the time. So sometimes it's too much, sometimes it's not enough. But with Parkinson's, usually constipation is something that's more common. So a lot of the times people think, okay, I just need more fiber. I need more fiber. I'm going to take a fiber supplement. I'm going to, do all the things. But if you take too much fiber and you're not drinking enough water, you're going to make a bad problem worse. So you need both. You also need movement. I'm not going to get into the exercise scope. We have a great talk later on exercise, but let gravity work for you. And when you're choosing your fruits and vegetables, leave the skins on as appropriate. I don't want to see anybody like eating a banana whole unless that's something that you find tasty. But leave the skins on fruits and vegetables if you can, and choose whole grains, beans, peas, and lentils. I'll just have that sound on repeat just because they're really powerhouses in fiber, protein, and those good complex carbohydrates. Probiotics and prebiotics can help. Warm liquids can also help. I realize that says warm fruit juice is what it's supposed to say. Decaffeinated warm coffee, warm green tea. Green tea, that's how you can double dip. It can help. That's a functional food, getting those good phytins, but then you can also help with constipation. There was one study, which I plan to follow up on in one of my studies in the future, it was a general adult population, but 1 kiwi a day improved constipation. So that's a safe thing to try on your own, just like 1 kiwi a day. Some people actually like to have it with the skin on, but I'll leave that one up to you. Chewing difficulties. So this is something not everybody experiences, but it might be something you experience. The first is whenever we're thinking about eating, if somebody has chewing difficulties, it can really impact the food and what they're eating. And it can over time lead to poor appetite, weight loss, and these are all things we want to avoid. So first, prioritize oral hygiene, go to the dentist regularly, twice a year if you can. Target dry mouth. Again, have that water bottle with you, sugar-free candy. Do the sugar-free or else that'll just make it worse. And sometimes with people that have chewing difficulties, it's just tiring to just chew and chew and chew and just have like a big meal. So breaking that up into 5 to 6 smaller meals throughout the day to reduce that chewing fatigue can help. And then it might be something worth exploring with your care team, your medical care team, as far as altering textures to reduce chewing difficulties. Some people do this without even realizing they're doing it. They'll be like, oh, I don't want a steak, but I'll have like chopped meat, or I'm gonna cook all my vegetables because it's softer, taking the skin off. So that might be something that can help as well. More on chewing difficulties. These are something I will say. Protein is often the macronutrient and rich sources of protein. Those are the foods that are often taken away first because they're typically harder to chew. This has problematic effects because protein's really good for helping keep our muscles, at the levels that they are right now. We don't want that muscle, that really good muscle to help us function, prevent falls. We don't want that to wither away. So still consume protein at every meal. But it might just need to be in a different form. It might need to be already ground, chopped. There might need to be a sauce or gravy. This is when, there are our nutrition recommendations, but then you have to prioritize the issue here. So a gravy is totally okay if that's what it's going to take to eating something that has protein. And then fruits and vegetables, cooking it to soften helps. Removing the skins can also help. We just talked about fiber. So if you're taking away some of that skin, you might need to have a little bit of a larger portion too to get more fiber. All right, we had a great talk earlier on food medication interactions, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, just because it was talked about earlier, but what I will say, because there is this food medication interaction, I have this picture here where it's basically if you're taking levodopa-carbidopa and you have it at the same time as something that has a lot of protein, like a cheeseburger, then they're basically trying to get into the door at the same time for absorption and utilization. But because your body knows that it needs food, it's going to absorb the protein from your food first. And the levodopa-carbidopa will either be partially absorbed or not much absorbed at all, and it'll be excreted. So this can lead to some issues with motor fluctuations, increased off times. Most people are just fine taking their medication 30 to 60 minutes before a meal or 2 hours after. And there are some people who aren't affected by this at all. So this is something where everybody is different, but if it's something that you haven't tried this before, this might be worth exploring. Also, other gastrointestinal symptoms, if there's an issue with what's called gastroparesis or delayed emptying from the stomach, or just, constipation, all of that can just slow absorption as well. So this might be a larger issue if adjusting this timing isn't helping. Updates in nutrition research in Parkinson's. So this is all basically works in progress. I'm not going to say you need to follow this versus that because these diets and these specific components are still being studied, right? And so there are some that are more safe to try because they may be recommended more for just the general group. But just know that this is kind of the current landscape of nutrition research in Parkinson's. And so the first one is one I usually get a question on, is about the ketogenic diet. And so this is essentially a high-fat diet, high-fat, low-carbohydrate, moderate protein. And I will say the studies that have been out on it, they're really small studies. There's a little improvement, but not a lot. It's still being studied. So this is not something that I want you to walk out the door and say, well, the dietitian mentioned keto, so I'm going to try keto. So I do not take credit for that, but just know it's being studied. So in other groups or other like general adult populations that follow keto, it can be helpful for like weight loss, for example. It's really effective in controlled situations like research. But taking that home, following a keto diet for we don't know what the long-term effects are, and it's really hard to be adherent to it. So, and it may not be safe either. So, I talk with your care team. If you've worked with a dietitian, that would be something, just loop your care team in before making that type of change. The Mediterranean diet is one that has more legs to stand on as far as diet, health, and there have been some observational studies with Parkinson's. But the Mediterranean diet is essentially it's more of a plant-based diet that focuses on the foods that are consumed in the Mediterranean region, and it's really high in vegetables, really high in vegetables, some fruits, a lot of fish as well. And then the talk earlier was about the mind diet, so I won't harp on that. There's been mixed studies, but I do think that I don't have any safety concerns with the Mediterranean or the mind diet as I would the keto diet, because those two diets are promoting kind of what I've been talking about as far as we want things to be varied. We want to eat our fruits, vegetables, our complex carbohydrates, whole foods, less processed foods. So plant-based studies are currently being studied. I'm focusing on, with my research, on medication management in Parkinson's. So we're testing out different diets for how can we optimize medication effectiveness while preserving muscle mass, as well as seeing the effects on sleep. And so those are two diets. What's clinically recommended is the protein redistribution diet, which is a low protein diet during the day when you want that medication to be effective, with a really high protein meal. But we're comparing that with a consistent protein diet. The low protein diet is really recommended for people with really advanced Parkinson's. The reason why I avoid recommending the low protein diet is because if you're not getting much protein, then muscle mass can decrease, muscle functions can decrease, activities of daily living become harder, and things like that. So low protein diet, I would give a lot of caution on. Food groups, dairy is mixed. So there's only been observational studies that have linked dairy consumption with Parkinson's, but really what has been published on dairy and Parkinson's, it's a really high intake, 6 servings or more in a day, but it's still inconclusive. When something's observationally being studied, it's not saying dairy causes anything. So I think I still recommend dairy for people with Parkinson's because it is a rich source of calcium and vitamin D, and preserving that bone health is very important too, especially because we don't have a consensus on any other impacts with Parkinson's. Meat and protein, make sure it's varied, but the amount and the timing is still being studied. Alcohol, so there was a lot of research coming out about like red wine intake being helpful, and but there's been studies kind of debunking this. So if you don't drink, don't start now. If you do drink, consume it in moderation. 1 drink a day max for women, 2 drinks a day max for men. That's not fair, but that's what our guidelines say. And then there's more studies being done on phytochemicals like flavonoids. A lot of these are being done in like animal studies, but they're showing good effects as far as cognition, Parkinson's symptoms. Flavonoids are what's found in things like berries as well as cocoa. Probiotics, prebiotics still being studied, jury's still out, micronutrient, B vitamins. When it comes to supplements, and I meant to mention this earlier, check with your doctor if you're deficient in something and get that deficiency corrected under that guidance. But throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks might create new problems. So just you're not in this alone, so work with your team. Making healthy eating easier. Who is hungry right now? I'm going to give you the high points. I'm happy to share my PowerPoint with you all. I'm going to have my email here. So I'm going to share this, but we're going to kind of, it's going to be more of a resource. First, plan ahead. Whether you go to the store once a week, once a day, every other day, once a month, make a plan. If we go to the grocery store hungry, we're going to choose maybe things that are at the end caps or by the register. So it might be a little tempting, and grocery stores know that and they play to that. So make a list, buying what's in season, save on money. Use the savings to buy things that make it easier, such as buying pre-chopped vegetables and already prepared ingredients. Frozen and canned foods are okay. I always get looks when I say this. Frozen foods especially, they might actually have greater nutrient content than what is fresh because it's frozen right as it's harvested. And so it might actually be richer, and especially those phytochemicals and the antioxidants, they're more susceptible to degradation. Canned foods are okay too. Eating vegetables in any form is going to be better than eating no vegetables. So that's my stance. I'm going to stand on that. Especially affordability is something, especially in today's food market. Food is so expensive right now. So buy what you can. Don't go for the convenience fast food options because you're scared of canned vegetables. Again, having vegetables in any form is going to be better than not eating them at all. Steaming bag vegetables, very convenient, but when we choose any of these options, when it's vegetables especially, do no salt added. Low sodium is okay, but really good for no salt added. And then when it's especially like fruits, do no sugar added. Explore pickup delivery options. I think in the post-COVID time, we're more familiar with that. Food preparation, especially with Parkinson's, cook when you feel your best. If you feel best in the morning, but then as the day goes, you're just feeling, worse and worse, go ahead and cook dinner first thing in the morning if that's something that works for your schedule, your timeline. Cook when you feel best, eat it later. Prioritize food safety, cooking larger portions, and we're going to talk about some adaptive cooking tools. So this is something that is all about making the kitchen more accessible for you. There might be something that works for you that doesn't work for the other person. So this is really just a resource. I've worked with people with Parkinson's who are often scared to use a knife because they're like, what if I have a dyskinesia? And all of a sudden the knife goes flying. Okay, so there are things, first you can have a cut glove. And something like the food chopper, that one in the middle at the top is called a slack chop, where you just put the vegetable there and then you just push it down. It does require a little strength. So, if you're getting a little frustrated with something in your life, go to the slack chop and just slap it down. These prompt cutting boards, they're a little pricier, but they have like these prongs that you put the fruit or vegetable or whatever you're cutting up on. It holds it in place. You only need to use one hand. There are also some that have a stability feature with a knife. So then it keeps the tip of the knife in one spot. So all you have to do is you just hold the handle and you cut. So this is something, all these are available, Amazon, Walmart, Target, wherever you like to shop there, you can find it. Food processors can be more than just for making guacamole, even though I love guacamole, but it can be for chopping up fruits and vegetables, mixing for sauces, things like that. Kitchen shears can be sometimes easier than using a really big chef's knife. I was talking with someone recently about how she loves to cook, big casseroles. Again, I'm from Alabama, so we love casseroles in Alabama. But she has burn marks literally on the mid of her arms. And she was like, it just happens. I'll get a tremor, or if I'm really focusing, that will just happen. So you can get long sleeve oven mitts. They exist. Look for them. And you can use an oven pull, and you can do something like what's in that picture there as far as pulling it out. Stirring, they have automatic stirs now. The picture, the orange thing in the middle is like a little plastic piece. Put the bowl on, like in the picture below it, and it keeps it steady. So again, especially if you're more affected in your left side rather than your right side, you can just use one hand to stir something up. Stove pot holder keeps it in place, especially if you just want to use one side. Built-up handle attachments. Those are all some adaptive cooking tools. So I did my postdoc with NICPAD, and it stands for the National Center on Health, Physical Activity, and Disability, and they're funded through the CDC. They have free health programming for anybody with disabilities. It's not Parkinson specific, but it provides enough to where it could be helpful. But they do have some Parkinson specific resources, but like their health programming, it's all meant to be inclusive and accessible for all. And so we have a program called Mentor. It's mindfulness, exercise, and nutrition to optimize resilience. Free, 8 weeks, all virtual. You don't have to go anywhere. There are mindfulness classes, exercise classes, and nutrition classes. And they also have weekly health coaching on other aspects of wellness, such as connection, social, getting time spent outdoors in nature, sleep, things like that. So this is something that, again, it's free to you, and once you're connected with NICPAD, if they have other programming, they can get in contact with you. So I wanted to give that little plug while I'm here. All of my research studies are in person. I'm looking to branch out and do more virtual telehealth, but stay tuned for that.